I walked into my own house. My mom said, "You should have called first." My sister added, "This is our space now." I smiled, "You're right. Good luck, I sold the house this morning. Now they regret what they did." The key turned in the lock like it had 1,000 times before, but something felt different as I stepped into what should have been my sanctuary. The familiar scent of vanilla candles had been replaced by something sharper, more floral. My work boots echoed differently on the hardwood floors I'd refinished myself 3 summers ago. "You should have called first," came my mother's voice from the living room, not even bothering to look up from her magazine. Patricia had always been direct, but this felt different. Cold. My sister Emma emerged from the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, wearing what looked suspiciously like my old college sweatshirt. "This is our space now, Jake," she said with a casual shrug that made my blood pressure spike. "You can't just walk in here whenever you want anymore." I stood there for a moment, taking in the scene. The furniture had been rearranged. My grandfather's old recliner was gone, replaced by some modern monstrosity that looked like it belonged in a hotel lobby. Family photos that included me had vanished from the mantel, replaced by pictures of just the two of them at various restaurants and events I'd never heard about. The smile that spread across my face wasn't born of happiness. It was the smile of someone who'd been planning for this exact moment for months. "You're right," I said, pulling out my phone and scrolling to a particular email. "Good luck. I sold the house this morning." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's magazine slipped from her hands, and Emma's coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. "What?" Emma whispered. I held up my phone, showing them the email confirmation from the real estate attorney. Closing was at 9 a.m. Cash sale. The new owners take possession on Friday. To understand how we got here, I need to take you back 18 months to when everything started falling apart. I bought this house when I was 26, fresh out of my electrician apprenticeship and making decent money. It wasn't much, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a decent neighborhood, but it was mine. Every payment, every repair, every improvement came from my own sweat and savings. I'd even paid it off early, something I was incredibly proud of. My dad had passed away when I was 22, leaving behind a pile of medical debt and not much else. Mom struggled for years, bouncing between minimum wage jobs and government assistance. Emma, 5 years younger than me, had always been the artistic type, which apparently meant avoiding any job that required showing up consistently. When Mom lost her apartment due to late rent payments, I didn't hesitate to offer her my spare room. "Just until you get back on your feet," I'd said. That was supposed to be temporary. When Emma dropped out of college for the 3rd time and needed a place to stay, I opened my door again. Family helps family, I told myself. But temporary became permanent, and gratitude became entitlement. At first, it was small things. They'd use my Netflix account and change all the profile settings. They'd eat my food without replacing it. Emma would invite friends over without asking, leaving messes I'd have to clean up after 12-hour workdays. "Jake, you're never here anyway," she'd say when I complained. "You're always working." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was working those long hours partly to support them. Things escalated when I started dating Sarah, a nurse I'd met at a coffee shop near the hospital. She was smart, funny, and kind, everything I'd been looking for. But every time she came over, Mom and Emma would make her feel unwelcome. "She seems nice," Mom would say with that passive-aggressive tone she'd perfected over the years, "but are you sure you want to get serious? You have responsibilities here." Emma was worse. She'd monopolize the TV when Sarah came over, play music too loud when we were trying to talk, and once even invited her ex-boyfriend over for study group that lasted until 2 in the morning, right in the living room where Sarah and I were trying to watch a movie. "Your family doesn't like me," Sarah said after a particularly awkward dinner where Emma had spent the entire meal talking about how independent women don't need men to pay their bills. "They'll come around," I assured her, but deep down, I knew they wouldn't. The breaking point came 8 months ago. I'd been working a major commercial project that required me to travel to different job sites across the state. It was good money, great money, actually, but it meant being away from home 3 or 4 days a week for about 2 months. When I returned from one of these trips, I found that they'd completely redecorated the living room. My furniture was gone, replaced with new stuff I'd never seen before. "We thought you'd like it," Emma said when I confronted them. The old stuff was so outdated. "Where's my grandfather's chair?" I asked. That recliner had been the one thing of value my dad had left me, and it held more sentimental value than everything else in the house combined. "Oh, that old thing?" Mom waved dismissively. "We donated it. It was falling apart anyway." They donated my grandfather's chair. Without asking. While I was away working extra hours to support them. That night, I called Sarah and told her everything. She listened patiently as I vented about feeling like a stranger in my own home. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "They're family." Jake, family doesn't treat family like this. You deserve better. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention to things I'd been ignoring. Mom hadn't looked for a job in over 6 months. Emma worked maybe 15 hours a week at a local boutique and spent the rest of her time treating my house like her personal resort. They'd also started making comments about Sarah that crossed every line imaginable. She's not really your type, is she? Mom said one evening. I mean, she seems a little uptight. Remember when you dated Jennifer in high school? Emma added. She was so much more fun. And she actually liked your family. Jennifer had been a disaster who'd cheated on me junior year, and they knew it. The final straw came during Sarah's birthday dinner. I'd planned a quiet evening at home, cooking her favorite meal and giving her the necklace I'd been saving up for. Mom and Emma knew how important this evening was to me. Emma invited 3 of her friends over without warning, turning the quiet dinner into a chaotic party. They were loud, drunk, and completely disrespectful. One of them even made a pass at Sarah, right in front of me. When I asked them to leave, Emma threw a tantrum. This is my home too. She screamed. I have a right to have friends over. It's not your home, I said quietly. It's my house. Same thing, Mom interjected. We're family. What's yours is ours. Sarah left early that night, and I don't blame her. When I walked her to her car, she was crying. I can't do this anymore, Jake, she said. I love you, but I can't compete with them. They'll never let you choose anyone over them. Sarah, please, no. She shook her head. Call me when you figure out what you want. But until then, I need space. She drove away, leaving me standing in my driveway feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. That night, I made a decision. I was done. But I didn't want to just kick them out. That would make me the bad guy, the ungrateful son and brother who threw his family onto the street. No, I wanted them to understand exactly what they'd thrown away. The plan started forming the next morning. I began documenting everything, taking photos of the house, keeping receipts for all the groceries I bought that they consumed, tracking utility bills, everything. I opened a separate bank account and started moving my money. I also started talking to a real estate attorney about my options. That's when I learned something interesting. Since the house was paid off, and in my name only, I had complete control over it. I could sell it whenever I wanted, to whomever I wanted, with whatever timeline I chose. This was 8 months ago, 8 long months of careful planning and preparation. Over the next several months, I became a ghost in my own home. I worked longer hours, took on more traveling jobs, and saved every penny I could. When I was home, I was polite but distant. I stopped buying groceries for them, stopped paying for their entertainment subscriptions, stopped subsidizing their lifestyle in every way I'd been doing without realizing it. The changes were gradual but deliberate. I started with small things, switching the Wi-Fi password and not sharing it, buying my own food and keeping it in a mini fridge I installed in my bedroom, canceling the premium cable package they loved so much. When they complained, I just shrugged. Money's tight, I'd say. We all need to cut back. Of course, money wasn't tight for me. I was making more than ever, taking on weekend jobs and overtime shifts. But every dollar I saved was a dollar toward my freedom. The grocery situation was particularly revealing. For months, I'd been buying food for 3 people while they contributed nothing. When I stopped, they were genuinely confused about how to feed themselves. There's nothing to eat, Emma complained one evening, staring into the empty refrigerator. There's a grocery store 2 miles away, I replied, not looking up from my phone. But I don't have money for groceries. Then maybe you should work more than 15 hours a week. She stared at me like I'd suggested she climb Mount Everest. You've been weird lately, Emma said one evening. Are you okay? I'm fine, I replied. Just tired. But I wasn't just tired. I was methodically planning their exit and my escape. Every day brought new revelations about how entitled they'd become. Mom had been using my credit card for her online shopping, small amounts she thought I wouldn't notice. Emma had been telling her friends they could use our address for package deliveries, turning my front porch into an unofficial Amazon distribution center. The breaking point almost came early when I discovered they'd been going through my mail. I only found out because Emma accidentally mentioned a job offer I'd received from a company in Denver, a letter she had no business knowing about. How do you know about that? I asked. She froze, realizing her mistake. We were worried about you. You've been so secretive lately. So you opened my mail? It was just sitting there, Mom interjected, coming to Emma's defense. We thought it might be important. It was important. To me. It was my private correspondence. We're family, Mom said, as if that explained everything. We don't have secrets from each other. That's when I realized they'd been monitoring my life like I was a teenager instead of a grown man who owned the house they were living in. I installed a locking mailbox the next day. Their reaction to my increased independence was telling. Instead of respecting my boundaries, they doubled down on their possessive behavior. Mom started accidentally scheduling her unemployment phone calls during times when I usually relaxed at home, talking loudly about her financial problems. Emma began bringing her drama-filled friends over more frequently, always when I was trying to unwind after long workdays. "We never see you anymore," Mom said one evening when I declined to watch a movie with them. "You're always working or locked in your room." "I'm tired, Mom. I need some space." "Space from your own family?" Her voice carried that wounded tone she'd perfected over the years. "That's not healthy, Jake." But I was healthier than I'd been in months. I was sleeping better, eating better, and for the first time in over a year, I felt like I had control over my own life. The only unhealthy thing was the situation I was planning to change. I started documenting everything more carefully. I took photos of the mail they'd opened, kept screenshots of the credit card charges they'd made without permission, recorded the times they had loud parties when I asked them to keep it down. I wasn't planning to sue them, but I wanted evidence of their behavior in case they tried to turn other family members against me. The documentation process was eye-opening. In 1 month alone, they'd cost me over $800 in food, utilities, streaming services, and other expenses they just assumed I'd cover. Over the course of the 18 months they'd been living with me, the number was staggering. I also started researching their options. Mom qualified for several assistance programs she'd never bothered to apply for. Emma could get financial aid for school if she actually enrolled in classes. There were job training programs, housing assistance, even transportation help available. They had options, they just preferred the option where I took care of everything. The real estate market research was fascinating. My house had appreciated significantly since I'd bought it, partly because of the improvements I'd made and partly because the neighborhood had become more desirable. I could sell it for enough to buy something smaller but nicer in a better area, closer to Sarah and my work. I started looking at apartments and condos online during my lunch breaks. There was a beautiful 2-bedroom condo near the lake that had been on the market for a few weeks. It had a modern kitchen, a view of the water, and best of all, it was in a building with controlled access. No one could just walk in and make themselves at home. The psychological aspect of the situation was perhaps the most difficult part. These were people I loved, people I'd been taking care of in various ways my entire adult life. But love and enabling aren't the same thing, and I was finally starting to understand the difference. I called my cousin David one evening, the only family member I trusted to be objective about the situation. He lived 3 states away and had always been straight with me. "Jake, this has been going on for how long?" he asked after I explained the situation. "A year and a half. And they're not paying rent, utilities, groceries, anything?" "Nothing. Emma works part-time and spends her money on clothes and going out. Mom hasn't had a real job in months." "What did they do before they moved in with you?" "They figured it out. They always figured it out. And they'll figure it out again," David said firmly. "You're not helping them by letting them use you like this. You're hurting them. And you're definitely hurting yourself." It was exactly what I needed to hear from someone outside the situation. The plan solidified over the following weeks. I would sell the house quickly and quietly, give them minimal notice, and force them to face reality. It seemed harsh, but every other approach had failed. Conversations didn't work. Boundaries didn't work. Even temporary consequences didn't work because they knew I'd always cave eventually. This time would be different. I spent extra time at work learning new skills, taking certifications that would make me more valuable and marketable. If I was starting over, I wanted to start from a position of strength. My supervisor noticed my increased dedication and offered me a promotion to lead electrician on major projects. It meant more responsibility but also significantly more money. "You've really stepped up lately, Jake," he said. "Whatever's motivating you, keep it up." The motivation was simple. I was building a life worth living instead of just surviving in a situation that drained me. I also started therapy. I'd never considered it before, but I realized I needed to understand why I'd let the situation get so bad in the first place. Dr. Martinez helped me see patterns I've been blind to. "You've been the caretaker in your family since your father died," she observed. "That's a lot of responsibility for someone who was barely an adult himself." But they needed help. They needed help then. What do they need now? It was a simple question that changed everything. What they needed now wasn't more help, it was motivation to help themselves. The therapy sessions also helped me prepare for the confrontation I knew was coming. Dr. Martinez taught me techniques for staying calm under pressure, for not getting drawn into emotional manipulation, for maintaining my boundaries even when people I loved were angry with me. "They're going to be upset," she said. "They're going to try to make you feel guilty. They're going to push every button they know how to push. Are you prepared for that?" "I think so," I said. "What's your goal in this situation?" "I want them to become independent. I want them to take responsibility for their own lives. And if they don't? If they choose to stay angry and blame you instead of learning from this experience? Then that's their choice, I realized. I can't control their response. I can only control my own actions. It was liberating to finally understand that distinction. They didn't seem to notice that I'd moved most of my personal belongings out of the common areas. The few family photos that included me disappeared from my room and into storage. My important documents, my grandfather's other belongings that I'd managed to salvage, even my good tools, everything important was slowly and systematically moved to a storage unit across town. Meanwhile, they seemed to be settling in more permanently. Emma started calling it our house when talking to her friends. Mom began making decorating plans for rooms she wanted to update. They were acting like I was just a roommate who helped with expenses, not the sole owner of the property they were living in. Their sense of ownership became more blatant as weeks passed. Mom started talking about investing in home improvements, with my money, of course. She wanted to renovate the guest bathroom, update the kitchen backsplash, maybe add a deck to the backyard. When I pointed out that any improvements would increase the value of my asset, not theirs, she looked at me like I was being petty. "It's not about money, Jake," she said. "It's about making this place feel like home for all of us." But it already was my home. They were the ones who'd made it feel foreign to me. Emma's behavior was even more presumptuous. She'd started rearranging furniture without asking, claiming she was optimizing the space. She moved my desk from the living room to the basement, saying the living room looked better without it. When I protested, she rolled her eyes. "You never use it anyway," she said. "You're always at work." The fact that I was always at work partly to afford their lifestyle seemed lost on her. She also began making unilateral decisions about household rules. She declared the living room a shoe-free zone and put up a sign by the front door. She instituted quiet hours that coincidentally aligned with her sleep schedule but conflicted with mine. She even tried to establish a chore chart that assigned me tasks in my own house. "This isn't a hotel," she announced one morning, pointing to dirty dishes I'd left in the sink. "We all need to do our part." The irony was staggering. She wanted me to do chores in my own house while contributing nothing to its upkeep financially. But the most telling moment came about a month ago. I overheard Emma on the phone with a friend, talking about her future plans. "Yeah, I'm thinking about getting a cat," she was saying. "I mean, it's my house too, so Jake can't really say no. And Mom's been talking about turning the basement into an art studio. Jake never uses it anyway." My basement? Where I had my workshop and stored my tools. They were planning to take that over too. I stood outside her door, listening to her continue the conversation. "Jake's been acting weird lately, but I think he's just stressed about work. He'll get over it. And honestly, this arrangement works out great for all of us. I mean, why would he want to live here all alone when he could have family around?" She genuinely believed she was doing me a favor. "The best part is, we don't have to worry about rent or utilities or any of that stuff. Jake takes care of all the boring adult stuff, and we get to focus on the important things. I'm thinking about starting a blog, actually. Maybe about lifestyle and family and finding balance. I could totally monetize that. A lifestyle blog. About balance? While living rent-free in my house and contributing nothing to the household." I walked away from her door feeling a clarity I hadn't experienced in months. This wasn't just thoughtless entitlement anymore. This was calculated exploitation disguised as family closeness. That night, I called the real estate attorney again. "I want to move forward," I told him. "How quickly can we get this done?" "With a cash buyer, we could close in 2 weeks," he said. "But are you sure about this? Once you sign those papers, there's no going back." "I'm sure." The next morning, I took photos of everything. The house as it looked now, with their belongings scattered everywhere. The condition of my furniture that they deemed outdated. The basement where they planned to build Mom's art studio. I wanted documentation of exactly what I was walking away from. I also made copies of all the bills, utility statements, mortgage documents, and receipts that showed the true cost of their temporary stay. 18 months of free housing, food, utilities, and services. The number was staggering when I added it all up. But more than the money, it was the complete lack of gratitude or awareness that sealed my decision. They didn't just take my generosity for granted, they'd convinced themselves they were entitled to it. They'd rewritten the narrative in their minds so that I was the one benefiting from the arrangement, not them. The house hunting had intensified over the 2 weeks leading up to the closing. I looked at condos, apartments, even a few smaller houses in different neighborhoods. Each place I visited felt like freedom. Clean spaces where I could make my own decisions, set my own rules, invite over whomever I wanted without permission or judgment. I found the perfect apartment on a Tuesday morning, just 3 days before the closing. It was in a converted historic building downtown, with exposed brick walls, high ceilings, and huge windows that filled the space with natural light. It was smaller than the house, but it felt bigger because every square foot would be mine. When can you move in? The landlord asked. As soon as possible, I said, signing the lease on the spot. That weekend, I drove 3 hours to visit Sarah. She was surprised to see me but agreed to coffee. How are things at home? She asked carefully. That's actually what I want to talk to you about, I said, and I told her everything. The plan, the timeline, all of it. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. Jake, are you sure about this? Once you do this, there's no going back. I'm sure, I said. But I want you to know that if you're willing to give us another chance, things are going to be different. Very different. She studied my face for a long moment. I've missed you, she said finally. But I need to see that you mean it. That you're really choosing to put us first. You will, I promised. The house sold faster than I'd expected. I'd listed it with a real estate agent I'd found 3 towns over, someone who wouldn't know my family or let word get back to them. The asking price was fair but firm. I wanted a quick sale, not maximum profit. When the offer came in, it was from a young couple with a newborn baby. They were first-time homebuyers, just like I'd been, and they were excited about starting their life in the house I'd loved so much. Their letter to me was heartwarming. They talked about the birthday parties they wanted to throw in the backyard, the garden they wanted to plant, the memories they hoped to make. It made me feel good about my decision. The house would be loved again. I scheduled the closing for a Tuesday morning, with possession transferring immediately at closing. I knew that Mom and Emma would both be asleep since I'd been working a job that started at 5 a.m. for the past 2 weeks, so they were used to me being gone early. The closing took less than an hour. I signed the papers, handed over the keys to the new owners, and deposited the check. After settling with the attorney and paying closing costs, I walked away with enough money to put a down payment on something else and have a substantial emergency fund. I spent the rest of the morning apartment hunting. I'd already identified a few possibilities: nice places closer to Sarah's hospital, closer to most of my regular job sites. Places where I could start fresh. By lunchtime, I'd put deposits down on a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment with a view of the lake. The move-in date was Saturday, perfect timing. Then I drove home to deliver the news. Walking into that house for what I knew would be the last time felt surreal. Everything looked different to me now. It wasn't my sanctuary anymore, it was just a building. The new furniture they'd chosen without asking me looked cheap and temporary. The pictures on the mantel looked staged and fake. And then came the moment I'd been rehearsing for months. You should have called first, Mom said without looking up. This is our space now, Emma added with that casual entitlement that had driven me crazy for so long. But instead of anger, I felt calm. Free. You're right, I said, and I meant it. They were absolutely right. It was their space now. For about 4 more days. Good luck. I sold the house this morning. The aftermath was everything I'd expected and worse. Emma dropped her coffee mug. It shattered on the kitchen floor, the floor I'd installed myself, learning how to lay tile from YouTube videos because I couldn't afford to hire someone. What do you mean you sold it? Mom's voice was shrill, panicked. You can't sell it. We live here. You lived here, I corrected. The new owners take possession today, I corrected. The closing happened this morning. You have until 5 p.m. to find somewhere else to go. Jake, this is insane, Emma said, her voice shaking. This is our home. No, I replied calmly. It was my house. I bought it, I paid for it, I maintained it. You were guests. Guests who overstayed their welcome. What followed was 2 hours of the most intense arguing I'd ever experienced. They cycled through every emotional manipulation tactic in the book: anger, tears, guilt, bargaining, more anger. How could you do this to family? Mom demanded. After everything we've been through? Emma added. After Dad died and we only had each other? You're throwing us out on the street. Mom wailed. Your own mother. I listened to all of it with a strange sense of detachment. These were the same tactics they'd been using on me for years, but somehow they didn't work anymore. Maybe because I'd finally seen them for what they really were. Where are we supposed to go? Emma asked, and for the first time, she sounded genuinely scared instead of angry. I don't know, I said honestly. But you're adults. You'll figure it out. Jake, please, Mom's voice broke. I'm 53 years old. I can't start over. You're 53, healthy, and perfectly capable of working, I replied. You've been starting over your whole life. This is just one more time. What about all our stuff? Emma gestured around the room. Whatever you brought with you, you can take with you. Everything else stays with the house. But the furniture you bought with what money? I asked. The furniture you put on credit cards I've been helping you pay off? The furniture you bought to replace my things that you got rid of without asking? They had no answer for that. The next few hours were chaos. They tried everything, threatening to sue me, they had no grounds, trying to get other family members to guilt me into changing my mind. Our few remaining relatives were tired of their drama too, even attempting to sabotage the sale by calling the real estate agent and claiming there were problems with the house. But the sale was rock solid. I'd been meticulous about every detail, and the buyer's inspection had gone perfectly. Emma tried a different approach that afternoon, as they frantically packed their belongings. "What about Sarah?" she asked. "I thought you wanted to get back together with her. How's she going to feel about you making your own family homeless?" "Sarah knows everything," I said. "She supports my decision completely. In fact, we're looking at engagement rings this weekend." The look on Emma's face was priceless. In all her scheming to get rid of Sarah, she'd never considered that her behavior might drive me away instead. The afternoon came quickly. I took the day off work to make sure the transition went smoothly. The new owners, Michael and Lisa Chen, arrived with their moving truck at 10 a.m., right on schedule. Mom and Emma were still packing when they showed up. "I'm so sorry," I apologized to the Kens. "They'll be out within the hour." Michael, a software engineer about my age, was understanding. "No worries, man. Moving is always stressful." If only he knew. I helped Mom and Emma load their belongings into the rental truck they'd managed to secure at the last minute. Most of their stuff fit easily, they hadn't accumulated as much as they'd thought over the past year and a half. "Where are you going?" I asked as we finished loading. "Emma's friend said we could stay on her couch for a few days," Mom said quietly. Her fight was gone, replaced by exhaustion and defeat. "Until we figure something out." "Mom," I said, and my voice was gentler than it had been all week. "I hope you do figure it out. I hope you both find what you're looking for." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I never thought you'd choose a girlfriend over your own family." "I didn't choose Sarah over you," I said. "I chose respect over disrespect. I chose appreciation over entitlement. I chose my own happiness over your comfort." Emma was crying now too. "We're sorry, Jake. We didn't realize." "You didn't realize because you didn't want to realize," I interrupted. "You had a good thing here, and you took it for granted. You pushed and pushed until you pushed me away completely." "Can't we start over?" she asked desperately. "Can't we try again?" I considered this for a moment. "Maybe someday," I said finally. "But not now. You both need to learn how to take care of yourselves first. You need to understand what it means to work for what you have instead of just expecting it to be given to you." They climbed into the rental truck, and Emma rolled down the window. "We love you, Jake," she said. "I love you too," I replied, and I meant it. "But love isn't enough anymore. You need to earn back my trust and respect." They drove away, and I watched until the truck disappeared around the corner. The Kens were wonderful. They were so excited about the house, pointing out features and talking about their plans. Lisa fell in love with the kitchen, which I'd renovated myself 2 years earlier. Michael was impressed by the electrical work I'd done in the basement. "You really took care of this place," he said. "It shows." After they finished their walkthrough and I handed over all the keys, garage door openers, and instruction manuals for the appliances, I took one last look around. The house looked different with their boxes scattered around, but it looked alive again. It looked like a home where people would be happy. I drove straight to Sarah's apartment. She was waiting for me with a bottle of champagne and Chinese takeout. "How do you feel?" she asked as I collapsed onto her couch. "Free," I said, and I realized it was true. Completely free. "Any regrets?" I thought about it seriously. "No," I said finally. "I tried everything else. I enabled them, I supported them, I made excuses for them. Nothing worked. They had to face consequences." "What if they don't learn from this?" Sarah asked. "What if they just blame you and never change?" "Then that's their choice," I said. "I can't control what they do with this experience. I can only control what I do." We spent that evening talking about our future. Sarah had been offered a position at a hospital in Portland, Oregon, a fresh start for both of us if I was interested. I was very interested. The next morning, I started moving my things out of storage and into our new apartment. It felt strange at first, living somewhere that was truly my own space again, but it was a good strange. 3 weeks later, Emma called me. "Jake," her voice was small. "Can we talk?" "Sure," I said. "I got accepted into a nursing program," she said. "It's a 2-year associate degree. I start in the fall." "That's great, Emma. I'm proud of you." "I'm working 2 jobs to save up for tuition. It's hard, but I think I needed this. I needed to understand what it feels like to work for what I want." "How's Mom?" "She got a job at a hotel. Front desk, full-time. She's different. More focused. She found a small apartment she can afford on her own." "I'm glad to hear that." "Jake, we were wrong. About everything. We took advantage of you, and we took you for granted. We were so used to you taking care of everything that we forgot you were a person with your own needs and feelings. I appreciate you saying that, I said. Is there any chance? I mean, could we maybe have dinner sometime? I want to apologize properly. To both you and Sarah. I looked over at Sarah, who was reading on the couch. She looked up and nodded. Yeah, I said. I think we could do that. 6 months later, Emma graduated from her first semester of nursing school with a 3.8 GPA. Mom had been promoted to assistant manager at the hotel. They were both living independently, supporting themselves, and for the first time in years, they seemed genuinely happy. We had dinner once a month now, sometimes twice. The dynamic was completely different. They treated me with respect, they appreciated Sarah, and they never asked for money or favors. They talked about their work, their goals, their challenges, like adults talking to another adult. You know what's funny? Emma said during one of these dinners. I always thought I hated work. Turns out I just hated jobs that didn't matter to me. Nursing is hard, but it feels important. I'm learning so much about business, Mom added. I never thought I'd be interested in that, but managing a hotel is like running a small city. There's always something new to figure out. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. I'm proud of all of you, she said. That night, as we drove home to the house we bought together, with Sarah's name on the deed right next to mine, I reflected on everything that had happened. Had I been cruel? Maybe. Had it been necessary? Absolutely. Sometimes people need to lose something to understand its value. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their worst behaviors. Sometimes you have to choose your own happiness, even when it hurts people you love. My mom and sister had spent over a year treating me like a doormat, taking advantage of my generosity, and driving away the person I wanted to spend my life with. They'd assumed I would always be there to clean up their messes and subsidize their lifestyle. They were wrong, but here's the thing, losing the house wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to them. It was the wake-up call they needed. For the first time in their adult lives, they had to take responsibility for themselves. And once they did, they discovered they were capable of so much more than they'd ever imagined. Emma is now in her final semester of nursing school and has already been offered a position at the Children's Hospital. She's dating a guy from her study group who treats her well and shares her goals. Mom has been promoted again and is considering going back to school herself to get a degree in hospitality management. She's dating too, a widower she met at work who's kind and stable and treats her like the capable woman she's become. As for me and Sarah, we're planning our wedding for next spring. We're happy, we're building something together, and we're surrounded by people who love and respect us. The house I sold sits on Maple Street, and I drive by it sometimes when I'm working in that neighborhood. The Kins have painted it a soft blue color and planted flowers in the front yard. There's a swing set in the backyard now, and I can often see their little boy playing in the sandbox Michael built. It makes me smile every time. The house found its happy ending. And so did all of us. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just refusing to be a victim anymore and choosing to build the life you actually want. Sometimes you have to sell the house to save the family.